Good afternoon, fellow Patriots. This is Matt Shea, and welcome to Patriot Radio, broadcasting live from the capital of free Washington, Spokane Valley. And the legacy of Dr. Stan Monteith, bringing you the story behind the story and the news behind the news. And as always, this is the year we make our freedom reality because our hope is not in man, but in Jesus Christ. And we can't end in prayer, we must also move to action. And as Jeremiah 6:16 reminds us, stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good way is and walk in it. And you will find rest for your souls. I think a lot of us need rest today. I think a lot of us are kind of overwhelmed with what's going on in the world today. You're probably either at work or driving or at home right now, and you look out there and you say, this is unbelievable what's happened in the last 10 years to this country. And your opinion's not isolated. You're not by yourself in that opinion. There's a lot of people around the country who are talking, not publicly, they're talking in coffee shops and at each other's houses and at the fence that separates their yards and at the soccer games. What's happening to this country? What's happening? And if we focus on that, instead of focusing on the solution and the answer, which is Jesus Christ, it can be very depressing, and we can kind of get in this spiral of depression. And all of us, myself included, can fall into that. And you need to really just make that conscious effort of getting back in the Word and refocusing on Jesus, because He's the answer. It's not politics. It's not economics, technology. It's not working harder, actually. It's not the answer. The answer is simply Jesus Christ, period. And with a lot of things I'm going to be talking about here in a second, let's keep our focus on that. Because the genius of the Founding Fathers was that the temple of the Holy Spirit was the government of the United States. The body of the believer was the government of the United States. That was the purpose of the motto, no king but King Jesus. That was the reason that the Founding Fathers presupposed two things. One, you were a believer, and two, you showed up so the Holy Spirit could work through you. And, you know, we look at the amount of people that don't vote that are Christians, that are registered to vote but don't vote that are Christians. And then we wonder why things are happening in this country. It's because we have taken Christ out of it by not showing up ourselves. We have. And that thought came to me, and it's pretty profound, actually. Because if we get back involved, we allow the Holy Spirit to work through us, we treat politics as a mission field, as I've said many times on this show, things can turn around very quickly. But we've got to focus on our first love, Jesus Christ. And now from the front, your daily intelligence briefing on the international front. Once again, Russia moving nuclear-capable Iskander missiles into Syria. So they pulled out, right? Well, they want to make sure nobody misunderstands that they're not still interested in Syria, so they move those in. Still a tinderbox over there right now. You know, what else can I say about that other than just continue to pray for peace in Jerusalem, as we are admonished to do, because, my goodness, anything could set that off over there at any moment. Also on the international front, an international election rigger came forward. This is a guy that fixes elections. Well, at least he did in South America. He comes forward to tell how he did it by hacking into computers. So all these people out there, oh, it's going to be fine. There's not going to be any problem with doing computer election. There it is in living color. It was on Drudge Report. It's amazing. Guy came forward, told a story, how he rigged elections, hack computers. No computer really is secure. Doesn't matter what anybody says. And really a testimony against computer balloting. Folks, I'm of the volition, and it's been part of our freedom agenda for years now, that we need to go back to paper ballots in your neighborhood, in your precinct. It used to be a precinct did that. That was the whole purpose of a precinct committee officer. You'd have an election in your neighborhood. And you usually knew most of the people in your neighborhood, so you'd know if somebody wasn't there for the right reasons. You knew if they didn't fit, they weren't from the area and weren't supposed to be voting there. It was just a natural check, and that was without even looking at ID. But could you imagine if we actually checked driver's licenses or we checked for citizenship? Could you imagine what would happen? I submit to you, folks, there is so much voter fraud going on right now. And it's not just computer stuff, but mail-in ballots have the highest propensity for voter fraud. And that's not just me saying that. When you go throughout the world and they're establishing new voting regimes in a country like, Iraq, you notice that they didn't use computer balloting. You notice they didn't use mail-in balloting. They got a big purple ink thing on their finger because they had to show up in person. So even international election observers know this, right? But this guy coming forward just puts this issue to bed, in my opinion. We need to go back to the polls where you physically show up, period. Also on the international front, the Panama Papers. The Panama Papers. How many people have heard about the Panama Papers? Well, here's what it is. And if you haven't heard about it, you need to go online and find out, because this is one of the biggest news stories, should be the biggest news story for a long time. Huge leak of confidential documents from Mossack Fonseca. It's a Panamanian-based law firm, literally been the facilitator for moving large sums of money, usually underground, away from the laws of that country by some serious leaders. And today, Prime Minister of Iceland actually resigned over this. There are many more leaders implicated, including some people very close to Vladimir Putin, which probably gives you an idea of who leaked this. But anyway, it is incredible how much information's in here and how corrupt leaders around the world are, and we're using this network to move money around. Everybody, including former Prime Minister of Iraq. I mean, it's amazing. 11 million documents were passed to the German newspaper by an anonymous source, and WikiLeaks got this thing. So anyway, it is something you need to take a look at, but it kind of confirms what we all suspect, that there's kind of a different set of laws, different set of standards, different set of everything for some people that are self-appointed elites. And we need to get back to rule of law, a republic where the law is paramount, and meaning the public thing, the rights, the unalienable rights that we have, and government's purpose is to protect those unalienable rights, and nobody is above the law, and nobody can vote away the rights of anybody else. We need to get back to that, and this is what happens when we don't. But some very high-profile figures exposed in these Panama Papers, and we're going to be talking about this more as the weeks roll on. On the national front, once again, Hillary Clinton still not in jail, even though her investigators had to be specifically cleared to even view the emails because they were so top secret. My goodness. If this was any of us, folks, if you did that I'm sure there's some folks out there listening that work in an office. If you did this in your office, you'd be out on your ear in a few days. It's been months. Unbelievable. Also on the national front, and this is a little bit more interesting, and we've been talking about this, that this has been slowly happening. J.P. Morgan Chase is limiting ATM withdrawals by non-customers to $1,000 per day. Literally, folks. It's a cap on daily cash that will affect 18,000 machines across the nation. Now, some people are saying that there's a global war on cash. Clearly there is. Folks, I want to tell you where they're going with this. They are going to go to an electronic currency that looks similar to Bitcoin. That's why they've allowed Bitcoin to continue, because they can't slam it too bad, because this is what this electronic currency is going to look like. And right now we're seeing these just very slowly, very stealthily, hey, limiting $1,000 a day in cash. Go down to your bank right now and try to pull out more than $10,000 in cash and watch what happens when you ask for it. Well, wait a minute, it's my money, Matt. How can that be possible? Well, because it's not your money, according to them. And if we go to electronic currency, that is slavery, folks. That's why money, physical, tangible, honest money, is integral to freedom. Because without it, if somebody's controlling the money that's going in, and you have to pay a fee on your own money being kept in a bank, and then, going out, and there's negative interest rates, and that's eating into your savings even more, you really don't own that money. But if you are holding it in your hand, gold and silver, for example, maybe even something like Adam Smith theorized, called the real bill theory. You have a paper currency, but it's backed on commodities. Whatever it is that's tangible, or the representation of something that is tangible, which is what the Founding Fathers believed, you have freedom. And that's the problem we've got right now. I'm an advocate that if you want to have something tangible in your hand, so be it. That should be an allowed currency. Should be our currency here. In fact, I don't think paper currency is allowed by our Constitution because it is a bill of credit. But that's a subject for a different day. So when we're seeing this happen with J.P. Morgan Chase limiting ATM withdrawals now to $1,000 a day, now we're getting into some pretty scary territory, because what they're doing is trying to get all the cash out of the system to implement an electronic currency. So keep your eye on that. Also on the national front, religious liberty bill is signed into law in Mississippi. House Bill 1523 protects sincerely held religious beliefs and moral convictions of individuals and organizations and private associations from discriminatory action by state government or its political subdivisions. What are they talking about? Well, Mississippi saw what happened in Washington State, where the Attorney General here went after Barronelle Stutzman down in the Tri-Cities, who had sold flowers to some customers that practice homosexuality. And when they asked her to then be a part of their wedding and provide flowers for their wedding, she said, no, violates my conscience. So the folks in Mississippi saw that case that the AG is now prosecuting, a case against Barronelle Stutzman, and said, that's not going to happen in Mississippi. We want to preserve the right of conscience. Now, interestingly enough, Article 1, Section 11 in the Washington State Constitution, there is an absolute freedom of a conscience in all matters of religious sentiment. Article 26 of the state constitution says there should be perfect toleration of religious sentiment. Those are the things that are in our state constitution, but they're not even being followed by our courts. And I honestly have to brief some clients in my own law practice on this. Yes, that's what the Constitution says, but no, the court is not following it. Can you believe that? Well, anyway, Mississippi has taken a strong step forward to protect religious liberty and the freedom of conscience, because if you don't have the freedom to think, you're also a slave. There's kind of a little theme going on here today. Also on the national front, Shauna Cox, who was in the vehicle with Lavoy Finicum when that vehicle was ambushed, was let out of jail, and she began speaking out about what was going on and was having a tremendous effect at changing the narrative. Suddenly and inexplicably, she was slapped with a gag order by a federal judge. Now, so imagine this. You're at it, what is very demonstrably an illegitimate, illegal use of force in that ambush, now conclusively proven, because a dead man's ambush is use of deadly force. And there was no reason to do that, not to mention the fact they shot at the vehicle before he even got to the ambush, and not to mention the fact that they didn't even have warrants on Lavoy, and they were shooting at him. So they violated all protocol, and arguably several laws very clearly at the federal level, if not at the state level, and clearly the Constitution because it's a Fourth Amendment seizure. So she's speaking out about this, and this federal judge then slaps a gag order on her. You'd think that the freedom of speech, doesn't go away because you're, that's right, innocent until proven guilty. You only get a gag order slapped on you if you're guilty until proven innocent. And I got to tell you something, that is the way that the prison system is set up now. And folks, I am learning some very alarming statistics from the American federal prison system. The number of incarcerated does not include those being held temporarily pending trial. So there are some things we're going to be talking about in the days ahead, but ultimately what we're seeing happen is an attempt by the federal government to destroy the right to protest, to destroy the right to speak, and to speak out against what are very clearly illegitimate, immoral actions by the federal government. So we're going to talk about that more in the days to come. On the regional front, on a positive note, 3 more Freedom Agenda bills signed into law. One, the all-terrain vehicle reciprocity bill to allow cross-border travel with Idaho without having to get 2 licenses. That's terrific. But it gets better. We also got a bill signed into law that prevents the county auditors from putting their names on the outside of election ballots in election years because they were using it as a free mailer. Unbelievable. We even have to talk about that, but they were. They really were. And even better than that, we got the Wood Stove Protection Act signed into law by the governor that allows the installation and use of uncertified wood stoves in Washington state in times of emergency. It's a small step forward, but particularly for the folks here that suffered through that windstorm where 250,000 people lost power, it's a really important bill. And really excited that that got signed into law on top of the legalization of industrial hemp. And I will have a guest on the show about that hopefully in the near future. Hemp is an amazing substance. You can make everything from car doors to shampoo out of it. It's amazing. And we're going to talk about why Washington State used to be one of the largest exporters of hemp, and also how, if you're interested in that, how you can become a hemp farmer. Pretty good stuff. Also on the regional front, want to talk real quick. We've had some attacks of the Coalition of Western States. People have been attacking the Coalition of Western States, and anytime you become effective as an organization or you become effective in politics, you get attacked, right? And then what happens is you'll have these folks called agent provocateurs that will all of a sudden appear, and they will try to divide your organization. They will try to smear you, try to get close to you and then smear you, try to betray you. And it's important that everybody out there knows that term and understands what that is, because it's not just in the political realm. You see it in churches, you see it in business, but it's these people that come in, and this is usually what they sound like. I just want to know the truth. I just want to know the truth. Why won't you tell me the truth? I just want to know the truth. Well, I did tell you the truth. You just didn't agree with it. Well, why don't you tell me? I just want to know the truth. And that's usually one of the things that they say. And one of the other things that they do is they will try to set people up by sending fake messages, fake emails, or trying to get several people to talk to the person about the same subject and trick them. You'll see agent provocateurs do this, and their sole purpose is to divide organizations and actually to divide us as Americans on the broader scale. So as you see a lot of these things being exposed about the illegitimate federal government actions, particularly in Oregon, in Nevada, some of the things here in Washington that are going on, you're going to see more of these agent provocateurs pop their heads up. Just want to give you a few ways to recognize them. And next show, I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about that. On the local front, well, things are kind of quiet right now, but campaign season is coming. And yes, it is an election year, and a lot of people are looking to the state House of Representatives here in Washington because we're only 2 votes away from a majority. So we are going to be having an event coming up, a fundraiser for yours truly, and I will get the dates and times out for that, but tentatively right now, save the date, April 26th in the evening, We're going to be doing a fundraiser, and it'll be a great time, as all of our Freedom fundraisers are. Try to involve everybody, thank everybody, and have a great night celebrating the wonderful blessings that the Lord has given us all. And that is the briefing. Remember, the antidote to dependency and socialism is to be a God-fearing, self-reliant, freedom-loving American. Thank you to everybody that has been praying for Patriot Radio. And if you get a chance, go to Facebook/Patriot Radio US, like the page, share it with your friends and family. And we also are podcasting as well. We have these shows archived on Podbean, and you can go there and listen to it at your leisure. It's just Matt Shea at Podbean, and you can find it there pretty easily and listen to it maybe if you're traveling on the road and you go outside of the broadcast area. But also, the American Christian Network streams live this radio show. You can listen to it on your computer anywhere in the world. And there's a great way to keep up on Patriot Radio, even if you're halfway across the world. And there are a lot of people actually that listen via streaming. So thank you once again to the American Christian Network and all their wonderful use of technology to make sure we get the message out there. Well, speaking of getting the message out there and also of raising the next generation of freedom fighters that are going to be out there, my good friend Elizabeth Hodge, who has been instrumental in the Northwest Liberty Academy and just really been great in raising young folks and educating young folks on the principles of freedom. Thank you for joining me on Patriot Radio today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So if you could, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and kind of what got you started, especially into the idea of kind of this Liberty Patriot type of academy.
Okay. Thanks very much, Matt. Well, we actually, I'm on a foundation a charitable foundation that named for a man that has since passed away who mentored me in terms of liberty. And one of the members on our foundation actually came and told us about another academy called the Patriot Academy, which is different than ours. There's something totally different. It's a real good leadership academy. It teaches young people about how to write bills, how to debate, floor debate, and how to run for office if they want to. And a couple of years ago, they decided they wanted to run their staff out of Texas run the program. So that freed us up to do Liberty Academy, and we were encouraged by a number of people who said, well, do something with more free enterprise and a different perspective in terms of, approach, not perspective, but approach to teaching the proper role of government. And so what we do at Northwest Liberty Academy is we teach students what we call the moral and ethical principles of a free society and free enterprise, which basically means we have a two-part program. The first part is on civics, where the students learn about all three branches of government. They actually come to Boise and they will tour the state executive branch, judicial branch, and the legislative branch. They get actually to go into the Secretary of State's office, meet with our Secretary of State who explains the voting process, explains the importance of voting and eternal vigilance. As they leave, he hands them a copy of the constitutions of both the United States and Idaho, along with the Declaration of Independence. Then they go to the Treasurer's office, and they actually get to go into the old vault that's no longer used, but it's kind of a fun thing because the general public doesn't get a chance to do that. And he takes them up to the Bilberg room where they see the live streaming on the bond market that he has to keep tabs on. Then we take a walk down the street to the Supreme Court building where we meet with Justice Dan Eisman, who is one of our Supreme Court justices, and he speaks to them about the judicial branch. And then we go back to the legislature. The students get a chance to sit in the Senate or the House seats and have legislators explain a bicameral legislature and how that operates. And we don't do any mock sessions and we don't write bills, but we do teach them the proper role of government and how all three branches are designed to work. Then the next half of it has to do with free enterprise. We have entrepreneurs who speak. We have different business people who speak. And we have this year the president of FEE, Foundation for Economic Education, which is the oldest think tank for free enterprise in the United States. And the president, Larry Reed, will be coming and addressing our academy, along with Jason Riddle, who is a young man who gets the students involved in interactive games regarding free trade and the free market.
So I love the fact that we talk about free market economics. And if you could, real quick, tie it into Christian principles, because I hear a lot of things today attacking free market principles as somehow being immoral. So if you could, you can kind of give the listeners a little bit of how you address that, especially through the academy.
Well, and I'm glad that you said that, because we do talk about the moral and ethical principles. A free enterprise system means that you should have the right to free exchange of ideas, goods, and services. And as long as it's peaceful, as long as there's no coercion involved. And we tell the students, you must deal honorably, whether you're dealing in public service or whether you're dealing in business. In public service, if you decide that you're going to run and for office, then you should have a servant's heart, which means then that you must deal ethically and morally with people, and your job description is in the oath of office to uphold the Constitution. So that makes it pretty simple. In business ethics, you need to treat everybody with dignity. And I like to tell them, maybe somebody flying on your airlines can only afford economy, but you treat them like they're global premier. They may not be able to pay for the same services, but you treat them as individuals like they're global premier. If you value people, if you do the right thing, then you'll be successful. More important is the fact that entrepreneurs and business people, as they are successful and deal honorably with people, that provides jobs for people who are taking care of their families. So it helps people to become self-sufficient, self-reliant, and not reliant upon government.
But Bernie Sanders says we don't need charities. At least that's what he said today. He doesn't like
He said we don't need charities?
No, he said he didn't like charities. We don't need those.
Well, of course, you and I believe that charity is also love, and it's not coerced, right? Christ did not coerce people. And so I don't know what Sanders is talking about there. In fact, I don't usually know what he's talking about anyway. But, okay, well, this is the U.S., so he has a right to his view, Matt. I guess we'll just have to leave it at that.
I guess we will, because it makes no sense whatsoever.
No, I don't think so. But it's exciting because these young people, and by the way, we start at age 12 and we go up to 112. We had a former legislator by the name of Lenore Barrett who said, well, are you very strict on that age thing? And I said, you know what, Lenore? If there's someone over 112 with a note from the doctor, we'll let him come. But I think she was actually warning younger students. We just, at this point, our youngest students are 12. And then we've had full-grown adults in their 60s and 70s also come. We invite families to come, and we let parents attend all the classes free if their children are signed up for the academy.
That is excellent. And, so often I've talked about on the show, everybody needs to become a mentor of a young person. And this is a way that can happen, because it's not only young people that can sit through the academy, but the older folks like us can sit through there too. Sometimes we actually learn a lot.
Well, and because we do interactive things, it's fun to watch the adults and the younger people interact together, and they all get it. They all have fun doing it. So that's great. And I'm glad you mentioned mentorship, because we have two mentorship programs. We have a mentorship program for any students who are interested in being an entrepreneur. starting their own business. We actually have a young entrepreneur from northern Idaho who at age 14, his teacher told him to drop out of school, go to work for McDonald's because that's all he'd ever amount to. So he dropped out of school. His parents got him some tutors, and at age 15, he made his first $100,000. And now he's speaking in France and different places, and he's successful. But he did what lit him up, and he had parents that supported him in that and made sure he still got his education, but that his desire to create something would not be quashed. So we have a mentorship program where business people will encourage young people like that who want to go into business. We also have a mentorship program for students who want to become public servants, so that we explain what that means. You know, they ask me what it was like to be a legislator. I'm sure you get asked that as well. And I tell them, you know, if you like to be treated special, if you like people hanging on your words and wanting to take you out to dinner and lunch and everything, and basically treating you like a rock star, then go join a rock band because I don't want you in public service because you'll get your head turned. And so we talk about the need to have a servant's heart and what that means and keeping your word to uphold the Constitution. And then the last mentorship program we have is actually for our elected officials who believe in upholding the Constitution, so that some of us who are retired from the legislature help them with, studying the bills and researching things.
I am so glad that you said that. That is exactly the problem that we have today. People get over there and they the corruption process is like the lines in the road. It's the same pretty much everywhere you go. But we raise our young folks, and I don't know why we don't explain that to them, but then they get over to the legislature and they do get turned because they haven't been taught about it ahead of time. I was lucky enough to have, and fortunate enough, I should say, blessed enough to have a mentor that told me what was going to happen before it did, and it made life so much easier. And it kind of made me laugh when people would try to do what he said they were going to do because I expected it. But as Christians, I think it's key to staying grounded.
Exactly. And you know, my mentor happened to be on the House floor the day that I passed my first bill, one that had been given to me by leadership. So I was flattered, and I thought how nice that they would trust me. They knew my background was in Christian education and working with youth. So they handed me a bill that sounded wonderful. It was supposed to help young people. And he came up to me and he said, well, your bill passed. And I said, yeah, I'm so excited. And he said, well, you're very, very generous with other people's money. And I said, what are you talking about, Ralph? And he explained to me that I had used the force of law to make people give to my charity, and now the money that they had designated for theirs they can't use. He told me, he said it does sound like a good cause, and he said if you would have come to me, I would have helped you raise the money for it. He said I'd have been the first one to give to it. But he said you have to understand that the general population out there doesn't have the same ability that you do to use the force of law to give to their favorite charity. That was an educational experience I'll never forget.
There's actually a historical example of that, and
Davy Crockett.
Davy Crockett, and we do not even read about it anymore. Do you guys teach that down at the academy?
We teach Davy Crockett. We tell that story. We also tell the story. I don't know if you've heard of this one. It's the wild and free pigs of the Okefenokee Swamp. And it's a story about some wild pigs that nobody could round up, and they were wreaking havoc in the town. One day a man came in with barbed wire and fencing materials, and a couple weeks later he came in with all the hogs. And they asked how he did it, and he talked about how he bought some corn, put some in the middle, and a few came out and got some, and he put some fencing around, just low fencing, and kept one open spot. Then each day he would add and add until it was very tall, and then he closed the gate. He said, if you can get any living being to rely on you for the food you eat, then you've got them. And he said, you must not allow government, you must not allow yourself to rely on government for your food and your clothing and your life. And it's a real good story.
Well, that is a powerful lesson. That is a powerful lesson.
We also hand out Walter Williams' essay on the fact that we're a republic and not a democracy, because as we've gone into a lot of the schools here, it's always amazing how many people think we have a democracy.
I actually asked that question when I speak to young people. How many of you believe this and this, and how many believe we live in a democracy? How many of you believe that we live in a republic? And you'll maybe have 6 hands go up out of 30 on the republic side. Although now that they know I'm coming, I think somebody's telling them how to answer the question because
we were actually in Washington at the convention center in Spokane. There were about 7,000 people there a few years ago. And I asked people what form of government they thought we had. And when we go into the schools, we do it as a quiz, and the winner wins something, okay? And most people think it's a democracy. And then I said, okay, let's try this. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and then the entire convention center yelled Republic. And then you could have heard a pin drop as the lights went on. And we do that in class with students, too, because they'll say democracy, and then when I do that, they'll go, oh, yeah, huh?
Amazing, isn't it? It is amazing. This is Matt Shea on Patriot Radio, broadcasting live on the ACN network throughout all of eastern Washington, northeast Oregon, northern Idaho. And thank you very much for joining us. And I really want to say thank you to Elizabeth Hodge, Northwest Liberty Academy. Thank you for being on today. And there's so much to talk about with the Liberty Academy. It's not just free market principles, but you guys teach other principles as well. We just kind of got into that a little bit with Republic versus Democracy. But what else do you teach down there at the Northwest Liberty Academy?
Well, we are actually going to have our first children's business fair where children 6 to 14 will experience being an entrepreneur for a day. They'll be trained. They'll learn what it's like they come up with their own idea, and then they'll learn how to present it to strangers. And then we'll have a actual fair in a park where the children will be allowed to sell their things. The parents can sit with them, and the parents will help them through learning and mentoring them. But the day of the fair, the children themselves are the entrepreneurs, and they pitch their product or their service, and they get to sell it, and it's a great fun thing for them. And that'll be in July. Our symposium is June 15th through the 18th, and then the children's fair will be on the 16th of July, and we will be taking that into different parts of the states. We've already asked people in different counties to show them how to do the fair. It's great fun. We work with the Acton Academy on that.
Wow, that is phenomenal. And you also bring in Christian principles as well, and I kind of want to focus on that here for a few minutes. It's so important to dispel all the notions out there that you can have a constitutional republic without Christian principles, without Judeo-Christian principles, without the history that went behind all that. It's really important to kind of get rid of all of that garbage that's out there right now, and this kind of mindless parroting that happens where you hear people say, well, we don't need God in politics. We don't need God in the classroom. We don't need God here. We don't need God there. When that's really actually exactly the opposite. The authority of truth in the universe actually probably should be in all of those places. Absolutely. If you could talk about a little bit what you guys do at the Academy to address that specific issue.
Well, in fact, when we go into the public schools, we were warned that we could not teach religion. And I tell them, I will teach you a fact. I said, by the way, there's nothing in the Constitution that says that I can't teach religion. But okay, I'm just going to tell you some facts. The fact is, our founders founded our country on the principle that our inalienable rights come from God, not from the state. Now, you don't have to agree with them. I do, and I'm free to say that I do. And I've never been challenged on that. That's the whole premise from which we operate, and it's even on our website. that are, that we believe our rights come from our Creator and not from government.
You can't say it any better. And what is the reaction? I mean, I'm sure you have some kids that come there that probably have not heard this before. What's the reaction?
There's even been some teachers that were surprised that we said it. But the interesting thing is the students, you can watch their faces, because I love to look at their faces as I'm walking around the class, and you see little light bulbs go on. We've even had teachers tell us privately, "Thank you for doing this. We're not allowed to do this." And when I ask them why, it's usually because their curriculum is already planned and they just have to stick to their curriculum. But we've been invited back by principals and school teachers, and the students, they have been very receptive, and it's very interesting to watch. It's fun when you see the lights go on.
I am looking forward. I'm actually going to be down there this year,
Yes.
and I'm looking forward to seeing this firsthand for myself. But more importantly, I want to make sure that we get some kids from up here in the great Northwest, but specifically northeast part of Washington, down there as well. So if kids want to get involved with this, they want to come down there. How can they do it? Where do they go?
They go to our website, which is www.nwlibertyacademy.org. And by the way, Matt, we do not turn anyone away for lack of funds. So if you can afford to come, if you can afford to pay your own tuition, that's wonderful, because then it allows the scholarship money to go to other students. But if you really can't, or if you need some help with your costs, we do not turn people away based on need. In fact, just so you know, since you brought it up, this started out as a prayer, and we pray every day over the academy and ask that the Lord's will be done. We know that we will probably be facing some people that at some point or another are going to say something about us, and that's okay. This whole program is dedicated to the Lord, and His will be done in it. So we rely on people that help with scholarships. We rely on the Lord for everything that we have, and we've never had to. Last year we had one little boy that if we would only come and had him, it would have been worth it, and he had a very tough life, and it was a blessing to have him. So we have some great sponsors, and we're always looking for people that want to help, but we will not turn anyone away based on need.
Wow, that's terrific. You guys are doing a great work down there. There's other things that you talk about as well, and you have interactions with, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, with actual elected officials, judges, etc. Mm-hmm. If you could go into a little bit more detail about what a kid would experience going down there and being a part of the academy.
Well, they'll actually have an opportunity to speak to legislators who are currently in office, like yourself, and we have a number of Idaho legislators who are involved, and even past legislators. We also have a county commissioner that's been involved. We've had mayors. We had a mayor from the eastern part of the state, and all of us, a family, attend last year. And we've had legislators attend and take the classes themselves. So we want the students to interact, both the youth and the adults to interact with elected officials, because one of the things that I found when I was in office is people start treating you different when you're in office, and that's a big mistake, because that's, number one, how some people get their head turned, but it's also another way that people quit being vigilant, because they just say, I know so-and-so, a senator or representative so-and-so. Well, what they should be doing is they should be keeping our feet to the fire. They should be praying for us. They should be asking us for divine guidance to make sure that we stick to the principles that we should stick to. And the legislators and the elected officials that are involved with the Liberty Academy are those type of people that tell the students that, it's important to keep grounded, as you said earlier.
So when you were a legislator, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. When you were a legislator, what was the toughest issue that you ever faced and dealt with? Because we all have different ones for different states, but what was it for you?
I carried pro-life bill, and my pro-life bill, it was very difficult because there were people who were calling bills that they call pro-life, and they said it'll save 90% or 85 or 90 or 95% of the children. And I prayed about that because they had so many exceptions, to the bill. And I asked the Lord to show me what was wrong with that, because it was a big tilt in my mind. And if I was being too stringent, too strict, I asked him to convict me of that. And he basically told me that if I carried a bill that allowed exceptions of depression or not being ready or whatever, that I was actually not carrying a pro-life bill. I was carrying a pro-abortion bill, because I was saying, as the state in law, saying you may have an abortion on these issues. And I found out that there was one abortion doctor who always said health of the mother, because he considered full-term pregnancy to be 30 times more dangerous than an abortion. So he said he always said that. And he said it with a clear conscience. So
Wow.
I took a lot of flack over that. And, you've heard the big question now about whether women should be, held accountable. And that was never the issue. That was never the issue with us. It was always the children, and we were trying very hard to find legislation that would say that we would help counsel the mother, and it was really coming from a different place than saying throwing people in jail for that. Although we did believe that doctors that perform abortion were not keeping the Hippocratic oath.
Well, I think that's a very critical argument. Back when abortion was illegal, it was the doctors that were punished. I think there was one case, I think it was in Texas. There's one case out of thousands, literally, where the mother was punished over that, and it was doctors that were, because they were doing exactly what you're saying, violating the very tenets of their profession.
Right, and these mothers end up being victims themselves. I'm sure you've read the stories of women that have been suicidal afterward and had great problems with depression. And so we're not out to create two victims, but we are out to save lives.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense any other way. And my wife actually worked for a crisis pregnancy center, and I mean the stories are terrible of the trauma and the guilt and just the long-lasting effects that many women have suffered from it. Yeah,
that's right. That's exactly right.
No question about it. Well, I want to also talk to I'd be remiss because it's all over the news right now. But the land use issue, the idea that the federal government, and I want to set this up right. Most of the land around the Mahler Refuge was private land that was taken by the federal government and turned into so-called public land. Mm-hmm. And this entire land use issue has been at the forefront in the West for literally decades. And it seems like it's coming kind of to a culmination here where you've got one presidential candidate, at least, that has said he would give the land back to the states. Where do you think this is headed, number one? Number two, what's your experience been with this issue? Because I know you were deeply involved with it as well when you were in the legislature. Well,
actually, at the Northwest Liberty Academy this year, one of our speakers is Laura Hodge Perkins. She was a little girl when the Hodge Ranch was encroached upon by by the Forest Service, and I don't know if the BLM was involved too, but they wanted Pine Creek Ranch, Wayne Hage. In fact, his story's been on Fox News. Probably the archive would be Enemies of the State. They told his story along with Gibson Guitar and one other. But this fight has been going on for 37 years. 37 years, where the state has been trying to take their land away. And they've done some terrible things to them. The mother died during the course of this, and then their father years later married a friend of mine who was a congressman from Idaho, Helen Chenoweth. And then Wayne Hage died, and then Helen we lost in an accident some years back. So now the case has fallen to the children, who are full grown, 37 years of this. They won in Reno. A judge said that there was a conspiracy against them. The judge said this. And they won over a $14 million lawsuit. And Wayne Hage went to Forest Service and said, well, do you want to settle this out of court? And they said, no, we always win. They never run out of other people's money. So now it's being appealed, and I don't know how long this is going to go on. The sad thing is they could eventually win this case, but they may lose their ranch because of the fees that it's cost them over 37 years.
And that really is the story. They just try to grind you straight into the ground. That really is the story across the West. And you know what? The other thing, I'm sure you've dealt with the Administrative Procedure Act, where any agency that can write rules that have the effect of law, that we don't have the separation of powers anymore when that takes place. When you can use police powers to go in and, aggress on private citizens, that's totally unconstitutional, but it's done. Well, and this whole idea in the administrative state that you are guilty until proven innocent,
right.
And when you're guilty until proven innocent, people feel like they're pushed into a corner from which they have no other choice but to fight. I mean, that's just what happens. That's
right, and I don't, Alan and I subscribe to the principle of non-aggression, but we also believe in self-defense. And I don't know what people can do when someone tries to come and take their land away or their property away. In the Hage case, they took some of their cattle, and that's how they made their living. I mean, they took them. I don't know how ranchers are doing it, and I don't know. I'm very concerned if they come after the ranchers, they'll come after any private property, and can't support anyone that doesn't believe in private property. I have a real problem with that.
Which is why it's so important to get the next generation of freedom fighters down to the Northwest Liberty Academy. And if you could, one more time, Elizabeth, tell the listeners how they can get their kids involved and where they can go to contact you.
www.nwlibertyacademy.org. And they're welcome to call me. My phone number, can I give my phone number? Is that all right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
It's area code 208-869-1709. And we'll be happy to talk to them.
Perfect. Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining me on Patriot Radio today. I really appreciate all the good work, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
We look forward to it, too. Thank you, Matt.
Elizabeth Allen Hodge, co-founder and executive director at Northwest Liberty Academy. And again, if you want to get your kids involved, I'm going to put that link up here on Facebook very shortly on Patriot Radio's Facebook page. I'll also put it on my personal page as well. It's a terrific opportunity. And as many people, have mentioned to me, they learn more at these things than they do in school sometimes, unfortunately.
And I just also say that any of the students who come, their parents can attend all the classes free of charge.
And the parents can learn too. Perfect. Right. I love it. In fact, a lot of parents, especially if you were like me and went through public school, probably learn a lot more than you did in public school, outside of public school, reading and going to things like this. So Northwest Liberty Academy, And again, I'm going to put that up here on the Facebook page very shortly. Everybody out there, we've been talking quite a bit about the land use issue out here in the West. But we haven't talked a lot about the pro-life issue. And I want to highlight what happened in Washington State this year while I've got 1 minute left. And that is simply this. Finally, after 8 years, we were able to bring to a vote defunding abortion in Washington State, and we lost that vote by 2 votes, folks. 2. And it's because we all came together, united on this issue, and we pressed legislators across the state of Washington to do the right thing and vote to defund abortion in Washington State. And we're that close. And that's why the elections this year are so important. And that's why Christians being the largest voting bloc that doesn't vote is so disappointing. We should be voting. If we were voting, we wouldn't be in the mess we're in today. If we were registered to vote, again, Christians, largest voting bloc that is not registered to vote. If we were registered to vote and got involved, it would be completely changed. Folks, we're 2 votes away in the House of Representatives in Washington State. And the fact of the matter is a lot of these races are decided by thousands of votes, literally 1,000 votes, maybe 2,000 votes. And we're talking one large congregation or maybe 5 smaller congregations just showing up, allowing the Holy Spirit to work through them, and getting folks in there that are going to stop abortion in Washington State. And if we can do it in Washington, we can do it anywhere in the country. Well, thank you, everyone that joined me today on Patriot Radio, and thank you also again to Elizabeth Hodge of Northwest Liberty Academy. We're going to have that up again on Facebook. Remember to do everything you can to defend freedom locally. May God bless all of you, and may He make this generation the greatest one.